Welcome to Not Entirely Unlike Tea with Christine Collins. Hey there, it's Christine Collins, and today we have a very useful topic around what to do if you frequently get really good ideas in the middle of the night and it wakes you up, and how to retrain your brain to get those same wonderful, genius ideas later in the day at a more opportune time. So rather than losing a good night of sleep in the process of capturing wonderful, genius ideas, we can start by understanding that one of the reasons this happens is because when we are starting to get relaxed or doing a relaxing activity, we sometimes shift into the alpha or even theta brainwave, where we tend to be more creative. Our more skeptical side of our mind is relaxed and at ease, and therefore exciting new ideas are much more likely to flood in. During that transition between being awake and being asleep, our prefrontal cortex, which is our analytical, critical part of the brain, is less active, and in the meantime, our default mode network, which has to do with making connections between different ideas, tends to ramp up. And when we're more alert, that prefrontal cortex is kind of gatekeeping out ideas, filtering them based on logic and how practical they are. But as we get more and more relaxed, that little gatekeeper starts to take a back seat, and this allows for the floodgates to open for really cool ideas to come in. Sometimes this is known as transient hypofrontality, where those frontal lobes kind of step back, allowing more creative and unusual thoughts to come in. And even though this can feel really enticing, it can come at a cost in terms of disrupted sleep patterns, and that obviously has longer-term impact on us the next day with our cognitive functioning and how good we're feeling and everything else. So then it can become like a cycle that's problematic. The good news is we have neuroplasticity, which means that our brain can form new neural pathways. We can learn new things, new behaviors, new habits, and we can actually train our brain to release those more creative insights at a specific daytime time that's more convenient for us rather than the middle of the night or when we're trying to fall asleep. So there are some different ways that you can approach this, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's more like a trial and error. But one thing that can be done is a pattern interrupt, so that when that idea wakes you up at 3 a.m., instead of jumping out of bed, turning on all the lights, grabbing a device in an attempt to capture it in the moment, instead maybe keeping a really small notepad by your bed, something that's non-electronic, and writing down just enough to get the essence of the idea, just a few words, and do so without turning on any bright lights, which could further disrupt the sleep cycle and melatonin production. And also to have this minimal reinforcement, like not so much encouraging the brain that like, yes, this is the time when we're going to jump out of bed and get into this project and do all these things. We're kind of only minimally acknowledging that idea, still capturing it, but not completely sweeping into this project. The next step, which is very, very important, is that we need to teach the brain when you actually want to be receiving those ideas. So you have to create space and time for that to happen at a more ideal, opportune time, a daytime ideation period. Your brain really loves regularity. It's easier to form stronger neural pathways when we have a little bit of a routine or a rhythm, and there's a little bit more of a predictable time when we expect something to occur. So you can pick a specific time, whether that's in the late morning or the afternoon, or a time maybe right before you tend to get started with your creative types of work, and when your own natural circadian rhythm will support alertness, but perhaps not at its peak analytical state. So it's a time when you can be a little bit relaxed, but you can also maintain some awareness. And it's certainly not a time when you're trying to get sleep or rest. So for some people, that sweet spot might be a couple of hours after waking up or a little bit after lunch. Sometimes people get a little bit drowsy around that time of day, and you have a little dip in your alertness that actually favors some creative thinking. The next part of it is having some environmental triggers that sort of signal to your brain like, okay, this is creativity time now. Your hippocampus, that has to do with memory formation, is very responsive to these environmental cues. So if we have some kind of a trigger, a stimulus that you use to let your brain know, like, hey, this is now creativity time. It could be a number of different things. You can use some different senses, like you can use a specific visual, something that you look at. You could use auditory senses like music. You can use scents like an essential oil, an aroma, something that brings you into that more relaxed state. You can even set it up where you have a certain space in your environment, like a certain chair that you like to sit in to get your best ideas. And then before you go into this little session that you're creating for yourself, you can use some type of a guided audio, something that helps you to get into that hypnagogic state, that transition between wakefulness and sleep. So a 5-minute meditation or a little hypnosis or a little yoga nidra or focusing on your breath or something that's relaxing, a little bit of daydreaming can actually help to quiet your prefrontal cortex and then activate that default mode network and kind of recreate the same neurological conditions from when you're getting those insights in the middle of the night, but now we're trying to have them happen during the day. Another thing that the brain loves is a juicy question. So sometimes you could present your brain with a specific problem that you're trying to solve, a specific question that you're wanting to answer, or even like one thing I like to do is if there's something specific I need to create, like if I'm working on some promo copy or I'm creating a new offer or I'm working on some specific type of content, kind of going in with that in mind and posing it as a little bit of a question, like, how could I go about talking about this offer in a new and interesting way? And then release it. So not grasping onto that or trying to analyze it or logic your way through, just asking that question or posing that problem and then letting it go, holding it very lightly like it's a little butterfly and allowing your subconscious mind to work on your behalf during that little session that you've created for yourself, that little daydreaming hypnotic period. And allowing a specific amount of time, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, whatever works for you or that you have available. You can do it longer if that's available to you. But 10 or 15 minutes is often enough to get your mind down into that deeply relaxed state, allowing your mind to kind of wander and explore and be creative and try on ideas like they're little hats so that you're not committing to anything. You're not mapping it out and getting into your logical analytical brain. You're just allowing ideas to kind of flow in. And I do recommend having a notepad or something nearby where you can capture any ideas that do come to you during that time. And it can be helpful to create a reward system when you're in the process of changing a behavior pattern like this. So we're training our brain to do something in a little bit different way at a little bit different timing. So do something to reward yourself on the days that you actually set aside this time and do this little session. When the ideas come in, celebrate them. And then also celebrate yourself just for doing the exercise. Even if you don't get any brilliant genius ideas, do a little something to reward yourself simply for setting aside that time. And then when it comes time for bedtime and you're trying to break that pattern, do the same thing for rewarding yourself for just going to sleep and allowing things to kind of flow. Maybe slowly releasing the need to capture everything and write it down right then if it happens in the middle of the night. And then over time, your brain will begin to shift when it presents you with those brilliant ideas. And remember that this can take some time to make the transition. So trying it for just a few days, if you're not seeing that change happening, not to get frustrated. It might take a few weeks of consistent practice, setting aside that little 10 or 15 minutes or longer to do your little daydreaming session during the day, rather than giving in to the impulse to jump out of bed in the middle of the night to attend to those ideas. And you are essentially teaching your brain when you want to receive creative insights during that special designated time. And over time, your neural networks will adapt to this new pattern that you're creating, and your new and genius ideas will start to come in more and more on your new preferred schedule. So we're not suppressing our creativity, we're just shifting the timeline of when we're allowing those ideas to come in and attending to those ideas ideas and creating like an on-demand practice that allows us to get into those alpha and theta daydreamy brain waves when it is more convenient and opportune for us to actually attend to and work on them. So I hope this was helpful for you, and if you are looking for some guided tools that can more easily help you to get into those brainwave states on purpose at a time that is more convenient for you, definitely worth checking out hypnosis audios and yoga nidra audios, both of which I offer in my monthly membership, and all of that information is in the show notes for you. And until we connect the next time, I wish you the most magical and creative rest of your day. Thanks for listening. This is Christine Collins at transformcreate.com.